The storm started long before the rain. It was in my father's heavy footsteps pounding against the kitchen tiles, in my mother's voice dripping poison as she stood over Eli like a vulture. My son sat on the couch clutching his drawing pad, his big brown eyes wide, confused and hurt. He had only wanted to color superheroes, to imagine a world where good people always won. But in this house, heroes didn't exist. Only tyrants with blood ties. We had come here because I had nowhere left to run. My apartment lease had ended. My job had cut me without notice, and the shelters were full. My parents had laughed the last time they saw me struggling. But I had begged this time for Eli, for just a roof, a bed, a few nights to breathe. My father had smirked and opened the door, muttering, "Leeches always crawl back." My mother looked me up and down like I was filth she couldn't scrape off her shoe. "You just keep proving we were right about you," she said. Eli had looked at me worried, but I'd smiled like it was okay. But I knew deep down it wasn't. The first day was quiet enough. Just their glares, their whispers. My mother's deliberate scraping of dishes only for two people like Eli, and I weren't even alive. But by evening, the insults grew louder. "This house smells like failure," my dad grunted when I passed him in the hall. "Trash brings." Trash, my mom said when Eli accidentally dropped his toy. Every time I swallowed the anger, reminded myself we had nowhere else to go. I felt a piece of me dying, but I still shielded Eli with soft words, hugs, whispered promises that this was temporary. That night, the line finally snapped. Eli sat drawing again quietly on the arm of the couch. My mom swooped in, snatched his pencil, and ripped his page in half, laughing as she tossed it aside. "Art, you think you're some kind of genius?" She spat. "You're just like your mother. A mistake pretending to matter." "Stop," I said sharply, stepping forward before I could think twice. My voice shook, but it carried years of anger in it. "He's a child. You don't talk to him like that." My mom's head whipped toward me, eyes narrowing like knives. "I'll say what I want," she hissed, "because you bred garbage and brought it to my house. Maybe if you'd kept your legs shut, you wouldn't be dragging this parasite around." Ellie's little body trembled next to me. I crouched and wrapped my arms around him, whispering, "You're perfect." "She's lying. Don't listen." But my father's footsteps thudded in from the kitchen, his face already twisted in rage. "Don't you ever talk back to your mother in my house," he barked. "You don't make the rules here. You never did." "I'm just telling you not to hurt him," I said, standing my ground, though my knees shook. "I let you do this to me my whole life. I won't let you do it to him." And that's when his eyes went cold. That dangerous calm that meant violence wasn't far. He grabbed the rusted crowbar leaning against the door frame from earlier car work, lifted it like it weighed nothing, and stalked toward us. Eli whimpered, clinging to my leg, and my heart pounded in my throat. "Move," my father said, low and deadly. "No," I whispered, crouching and wrapping myself around my son, my body forming a shield. From behind him, my mother's voice cut through the tension like acid. "Let her get hit. Let her learn. That's what you get for breeding trash like yourself." The first blow landed on my shoulder, white-hot pain shooting through me. I bit back a scream, holding Eli tighter, whispering over and over, "I've got you. Baby, you're safe. Mommy's here." Another hit, this one across my back, sent me sprawling to my knees, but I refused to move, refused to let them near him. My father's breath was ragged, his curses filling the room. My mother stood watching, arms crossed, smirking like justice was being served. By the time he threw the crowbar down, my body was shaking, my breath uneven. But my son was untouched. My father glared down at me, disgust on his face. "Get out," he snarled. "Take your brat and crawl back to whatever gutter you came from." My mother stepped closer, leaned in just enough to spit her final venom into my ear. "You'll come crawling back again. You always do because trash doesn't survive long without someone's scraps." I said nothing. I gathered Eli in my arms, ignoring the screaming pain in my body, and walked out into the rain. The night was cold, but colder was the way Eli clung to me, his tiny sobs muffled against my neck. I kissed his hair, tears mixing with rain on my cheeks. "I swear to you," I whispered, my voice trembling, but fierce. "They'll never hurt you again, and they'll never forget what they did tonight." We walked down that empty road, each step searing agony, but my resolve burned hotter than any pain. That night, something inside me died. The girl they'd beaten down for years. In her place, something stronger was born. A woman who would make sure they'd regret every strike, every word, every ounce of pain they had ever poured into me, and now tried to pour into my son. And this time, I wouldn't just survive. I would end the reign of terror they called parenting permanently. The days after that night felt like one bruised blur. Every time I shifted Eli in my arms, the ache from my father's crowbar lit up my back. We drifted from cheap motel to borrowed couches. No real home, but safer than that house of horrors. Eli stayed quiet most of the time, drawing in silence, his once bright smile dimmed to a flicker. Every time I saw the fear in his little face, something inside me hardened. This time, I wasn't going to just run. This time, I wasn't going to hide. My parents had spent my whole life playing gods in a crumbling kingdom of fear. I had been their favorite punching bag, their daily reminder that I wasn't worth love. And now they had extended that cruelty to my son, a 7-year-old child who had never known hate until they spat it in his face. I spent nights awake thinking of every moment they made me beg for affection, every bruise, every insult, every time they starved me just to remind me they could. They had never feared anything, not the law, not judgment, not losing me. Their power came from believing they were untouchable. And that's what I was going to destroy. I called a lawyer the next week, one who specialized in child protection and domestic abuse. I handed her every photo of my injuries from that night, every hospital record from my childhood, every vile text and voicemail they had left over the years. It wasn't just about what they did to me. It was about what they had just tried to do to Eli. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking for help to save myself. I was preparing to burn their entire fortress of power to the ground and make sure they never had a chance to rebuild it. The lawyer listened quietly, her face darkening with every word. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "We won't just stop them from hurting you again. We'll make sure they never hurt anyone else either. People like this think the law can't touch them. We're about to prove them wrong." From there, the plan unfolded piece by piece. Police reports were filed, not just from that night, but reopening past incidents I had buried because I was too scared to fight. Old neighbors stepped forward with their own stories of hearing screams and seeing bruises they were told to ignore. Teachers from my school days, now retired, submitted statements about how often I had shown up with marks on my skin. My case became a storm gathering strength, one my parents couldn't stop or silence like they always had. Weeks turned into months, and they started to notice. My mother called one day, her voice tight with anger masquerading as concern. "Are you really doing this? Dragging family into court. You think you're going to win. You're trash. You'll always lose." I held the phone away for a moment, then brought it back to my ear and said evenly, "This isn't just a case. It's your reckoning. You made me afraid every day of my life. You swung a crowbar at me in front of my child. That ends now." And I hung up. Eli began to change as the case grew. I saw hope flicker back into his eyes when I told him they'd never be able to touch him again. "Will they be gone forever, Mom?" he asked one night, his voice small. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "Not just gone. They'll never be able to hurt anyone again. That's my promise." The first hearing date was set. My parents strutted in with the same smug arrogance they'd worn my whole life, convinced they could lie, intimidate, or scream their way out of this. They didn't realize this time they weren't facing the broken daughter they raised, They were facing a mother who had built herself back up brick by brick, fueled by a fire they had lit with every cruel word and every strike of that crowbar. The court listened. Evidence piled up like stones on their chests, too heavy for them to shove aside. Witnesses they didn't expect came forward. The mask they deworn for decades, the image of respectable parents shattered piece by piece, under the weight of their own history. And still I knew this wasn't enough. Stripping them of their power in court was one thing, but I wanted a final blow. Something so permanent they would never recover. A punishment that would echo in their empty house long after the verdict. That night, as Eli slept soundly beside me for the first time in weeks, I stared at the ceiling and thought of every time they threw me out. Every time they spat that I was trash, that I would never make it. They had clung to their home like a throne, the last kingdom they ruled by fear, their symbol of power over me. And I realized what had to happen next. I wasn't just going to win in court. I was going to take their throne away brick by brick until they were left standing in the gutter, where they had always said I belonged. Only this time, they'd be the ones begging for scraps. The plan for the final stage of my revenge was already forming in my head. And this time it wouldn't just hurt their pride. It would end their reign of cruelty forever, leaving them powerless, homeless, and forgotten by everyone they had ever tried to dominate. The court hearings dragged on for weeks, but every day chipped away at the armor my parents had built their entire lives. Their arrogance began to crack the moment witnesses started testifying. Old neighbors, teachers, even distant relatives they had alienated with their cruelty. The truth was no longer just my word against theirs. It was a chorus of voices echoing every bruise, every scream, every broken night. When the verdict came, it was more than I expected. Not only were they barred from having any contact with me or Eli, but the court approved my civil suit for damages. Decades of abuse had finally caught up with them, and for the first time, they had to face consequences they couldn't shout or threaten their way out of. But I wasn't finished. With the damages awarded, the final blow landed fast. Their house, the one they had lorded over me as a symbol of their power, the place they threw me out of as a child, the one they called their kingdom, was seized to cover what they owed me and others they had hurt. Within a month, eviction notices hung on their front door like a scarlet letter, visible to every neighbor they had once ruled with fear. I didn't go there myself, but I heard about it. My parents, once so smug, stood on their lawn, surrounded by their belongings, eyes wild, voices shrill as they realized no one was coming to help. The same community they used to intimidate walked past them without sympathy. They were just broken people with no home, no power, no family to lean on, not even each other, because their cruelty had hollowed everything around them. The day the house was finally locked up and the keys handed to someone else, I sat with Eli on our own small porch, watching him draw in peace. For the first time, his hands didn't tremble when he picked up his pencil. He looked up at me and asked quietly, "Mom, are they gone now?" I wrapped my arm around him and kissed his hair. "Yes, baby. They can't hurt us anymore. And they never will again." That night, I lay awake, not from fear, but from the strange calm of knowing it was truly over. I hadn't just survived my parents. I had ended their cycle of power. The people who once made me beg for shelter were now the ones begging for a place to sleep. The ones who called me trash had been stripped of everything they valued. For the first time in my life, the nightmare didn't follow me to sleep. The only sound in my head was Ellie's quiet laughter from earlier that day. The sound of a child finally free from a legacy of pain. And I promised myself no matter what came next, that was the only thing that would ever matter again.